Oh my goodness. I cannot believe my eyes. I woke up and saw that Jorge Masvidal has tweeted out that he is unretired from MMA. This blows my mind because it makes absolutely zero sense for his career and for the UFC moving forward. Jorge Masvidal, of course, won the 2019 Bad Motherfucker Championship against Nate Diaz via knockout. And he's hinted at fighting Justin Gaethje to unify the BMF strap, as it's known now, to kind of figure out who the greatest BMF is. However, what is working in Masvidal's disfavor is that he's on a 4-fight losing streak in the UFC. April 8th to Gilbert Burns by decision, March 5th to Colby Covington by decision, April 24th to Kamaru Usman for the welterweight championship, got knocked out in the second round. July 11th, 2020 to Kamaru Usman for the welterweight championship by decision. So his last victory coming in November 2nd, 2019 against Diaz for the BMF belt. Him tweeting out that he is unretired makes zero sense. I understand that he's a big draw for people to want to tune in to what the UFC has to offer at UFC 300. But we're looking at the welterweight rankings and who is he going to fight? So he's not going to fight Leon Edwards, who is the welterweight champion of the world. The number one contender is Kamaru Usman. He's not going to get Usman because he already has 2 losses to Usman. He's not going to get Bilal Muhammad, who is the number 2 ranked contender, because it's rumored that Bilal and Leon Edwards will rematch at UFC 300, though it is not confirmed at this time. Bilal Muhammad seems to be the next title contender as he deserves to be. The number 3 ranked contender being Shavkat Rakhmonov. That could also be Leon Edwards' potential next opponent. However, I don't see why Dana White would want to re-sign Masvidal to feed him to Rakhmonov. It's going to be a loss. Masvidal has decent striking, but Rakhmonov would literally submit him in the first round. The 4th ranked welterweight being Gilbert Burns, who I mentioned earlier, Masvidal has a loss to. His most recent loss on April 8th. He lost via decision at UFC 287. Number 5th ranked contender, Colby Covington, who Jorge Masvidal has a loss to on March 5th, 2022, by decision at UFC 272. So if he's not going to get a title shot or a ranked match within the top 5, I don't see how it benefits him to come back to the UFC. Now, the only potential fight I could see for Masvidal being the unified BMF belt against Justin Gaethje. However, lightweight champion Islam Makhachev has already called out Justin Gaethje for a title shot and vice versa. I know Makhachev is a little frustrated with Charles Oliveira after he pulled out of their fight, and Alexander Volkanovski stepped in, at which point we saw Makhachev knock him out in the first round with a head kick. So it doesn't really make any sense to re-sign Masvidal from the UFC standpoint. Now, him tweeting out that he's unretired could mean that he could go work for another promotion. I don't expect to see him in the PFL slash Bellator now that they're the same entity, because he has his own promotion of bare knuckle boxing and bare knuckle MMA. So he seems to be doing really well for himself in that regard. And there's no fights for him to win in those other promotions. I mean, Masvidal is 39 years old at this point of his career. The big fights, the money draws, that's what he should be looking for. And I don't see any fights coming from that promotion. The only promotion I could see him getting any advantage with outside of the UFC would be the Bare Knuckle Fight Club, and he would fight Mike Perry at Bare Knuckle. Now, Mike Perry has been phenomenal ever since he joined the Bare Knuckle Fight Club. I don't believe he's lost a fight the entire time he's been there. I know I watched him beat Eddie Alvarez and Michael Venom Page, so I don't see Jorge Masvidal necessarily taking that title away from Mike Perry as the greatest bare knuckle boxer of all time. That could be, remain to be seen. That would be a fun fight. But expecting Jorge Masvidal to make a return at UFC 300, it wouldn't happen at welterweight against anyone in the top 5. If he did return, it would have to be a early prelim fight, I would imagine. I mean, if we go through the rest of the welterweights, number 6, Stephen Thompson. Thompson versus Masvidal doesn't exactly sound very fun. Sean Brady versus Masvidal doesn't make sense for Brady's career. Jeff Neal, I think him and Ian Gary already have a fight coming up. Ian Gary being ranked number 10. Vicente Luque is ranked number 9. Number 11, Jack Della Maddalena. Number 12, Kevin Holland. Number 13, Neil Magny. Number 14, Michael Chiesa. And number 15, Renat Fakhretdinov. Now, a win over Jorge Masvidal doesn't really improve anyone's status among the top 15 for welterweight in the UFC. So I wouldn't take his comments about him being unretired to mean that he's returning to UFC 300. That seems to be the biggest thing that he could come back to. Obviously, the biggest promotion, but it doesn't do anything for Dana White. It doesn't do anything for the UFC. So I wouldn't get my hopes up about that. Now, personally, I'm a fan of Jorge Masvidal. I didn't know that he was fighting with Kimbo Slice back during, when I was a kid and I was watching Kimbo Slice backyard fights on YouTube. I did not know that Jorge Masvidal was in those clips. So I share a personal bond with Masvidal, or a personal love for him. I want to see him succeed. Of course, I don't want to see him struggle, but a UFC return just doesn't necessarily make sense. They could book him against some rando, but to expect any kind of significance from his return, you would be absolutely out of your mind. So, coming off of a 4-fight losing streak at 39 years old, I'm sorry, but the Jorge Masvidal train is over, and let's just pay more attention to his promotion that he owns, Gamebred FC, with bare knuckle boxing and bare knuckle MMA, because oh my god, the highlights that come off of that Instagram page are insane. So make sure you go check them out. But yeah, I mean, let's not feed too into let's not feed too much into his tweets or his ex that he is returning to MMA. There's literally no one for him to fight at this point, to better anyone else's career or his own career. So, Masvidal, we wish you the best of luck and looking forward to see what you do in 2024. However, I'm not expecting to see you at UFC 300. If I see you fighting Mike Perry, I can't wait. That sounds like a banger of a fight. And I would probably even choose you to defeat Mike Perry, but that's a completely different story. So we'll see as the year progresses. I want to thank everyone for listening in. This was a quick monologue, and I just wanted to kind of share my thoughts on Jorge Masvidal's career moving forward as he announces his unretirement from combat sports.